Imagine receiving a phone call from your daughter on Christmas Eve. She tells you she'll be home soon to celebrate the holiday with family. You hang up, expecting to see her smiling face walk through the door in a few hours. But that moment never comes. The chair at your Christmas dinner table remains empty. The presents under the tree stay unwrapped. And 20 years later, you're still waiting for her to come home. This isn't a fictional holiday horror story. This is the real, unsolved case of 19-year-old LaQuanta Riley, who vanished from Montgomery, Alabama on December 24, 2003, leaving behind a devastated family and a web of unanswered questions that continue to haunt investigators to this day. LaQuanta wasn't just another statistic. She was a vibrant young woman with dreams of becoming a nurse, a dedicated daughter who always kept in touch with her family, and a loving sister who never missed a chance to spend time with her siblings. Her disappearance would trigger one of Montgomery's most perplexing missing persons investigations. One that would uncover disturbing text messages, mysterious phone calls, and a series of events that would leave even seasoned detectives baffled. On that fateful Christmas Eve, LaQuanta did something completely ordinary. She borrowed her sister's cell phone to make some calls. She spoke to her mother, telling her she'd be home soon. She made a few other calls too, including one to a friend who lived in the Bridget Drive area of Montgomery. Everything seemed normal, but what happened in the hours following those calls would become the focus of a 2-decade-long investigation. The investigation would reveal that LaQuanta was last seen getting into a vehicle near the intersection of Virginia Loop Road and Teresa Street in Montgomery. It was a detail that would prove crucial, yet frustratingly vague. The exact make and model of the vehicle? Unknown. The driver? A mystery. The destination? A question that remains unanswered 20 years later. But here's where things get even more disturbing. In the days following her disappearance, LaQuanta's family received mysterious text messages from her phone. Messages that didn't sound like they came from her. Messages that would stop as abruptly as they started, leaving her family to wonder if their daughter was trying to reach out to them or if someone else had possession of her phone. The Montgomery Police Department launched an extensive investigation. They interviewed friends, family members, and acquaintances. They traced phone records and text messages. They searched areas where LaQuanta was last seen. But with each lead came another dead end. Each potential breakthrough led to another wall of questions. What makes this case particularly haunting is the timing. Christmas Eve, a time of joy and family gatherings, became forever tainted for the Riley family. Every Christmas since 2003, they've set a place at their table for LaQuanta, hoping that somehow, someday, she'll return to fill it. The case took an even more bizarre turn when investigators discovered that LaQuanta had received several phone calls from an unknown number in the hours before her disappearance. Despite extensive efforts to trace these calls, the identity of the caller remained elusive. It was as if LaQuanta had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only digital breadcrumbs that led nowhere. Her sister, who had lent LaQuanta the cell phone that day, would later recall that LaQuanta seemed normal during their last interaction. There were no signs of distress, no indication that anything was amiss. She was planning to return home for Christmas celebrations, had even talked about the gifts she was excited to give to her family members. The investigation would also reveal that LaQuanta had no history of running away, no apparent reason to disappear voluntarily. She had a close relationship with her family, was pursuing her education, and had plans for her future. All of these factors pointed to something more sinister, but what? As the investigation into LaQuanta's disappearance stretched from days into weeks, investigators uncovered a pattern of activity that raised even more questions. In January 2004, just weeks after she vanished, LaQuanta's bank account showed unusual activity. Someone had attempted to use her ATM card, but the transactions were declined. The surveillance footage from these attempts was grainy and inconclusive, adding another layer of frustration to an already complex investigation. The Montgomery Police Department's investigation took them through some of the city's most challenging neighborhoods. They conducted multiple searches along Virginia Loop Road, where LaQuanta was last seen. Every abandoned building, every overgrown lot, every potential location that could hold a clue was meticulously examined. But with each search, the mystery only seemed to deepen. One of the most significant challenges faced by investigators was the limited technology available in 2003. Cell phone tracking wasn't as sophisticated as it is today. The text messages received by LaQuanta's family couldn't be traced with the precision we've come to expect in modern investigations. Each technological limitation felt like another obstacle in the path to finding LaQuanta. The case took another turn when investigators learned about LaQuanta's social circles. She had a wide network of friends and acquaintances, but interestingly, some of these individuals provided conflicting accounts of her last known movements. Some claimed they saw her after the Christmas Eve sighting, while others insisted they hadn't seen her for days before her disappearance. These contradicting statements forced detectives to question everything they thought they knew about the case. In 2005, 2 years after LaQuanta's disappearance, her case was transferred to the department's cold case unit. This meant more resources, fresh eyes, and new investigative techniques could be applied to the investigation. The cold case unit began re-interviewing witnesses, some of whom suddenly had new information to share. Whether this information was legitimate or simply a product of time-altered memories became another challenge for investigators to untangle. By 2006, LaQuanta's case had gained national attention. Her story was featured on several true crime shows and missing persons databases. The increased exposure led to numerous tips, but each one ultimately led to disappointment. One particularly cruel development came when a woman in Georgia claimed to be LaQuanta, a claim that was quickly disproven through DNA testing, causing additional heartbreak for the Riley family. The investigation revealed another disturbing detail that hadn't been previously disclosed to the public. In the weeks before her disappearance, LaQuanta had mentioned to a close friend that she felt like someone was watching her. She didn't elaborate on this feeling, and at the time, her friend didn't think much of it. But in retrospect, this detail took on a much more sinister significance. In 2008, 5 years after LaQuanta vanished, her mother received another series of mysterious text messages. These messages, unlike the ones from 2003, were traced to a prepaid phone purchased in Montgomery. Despite extensive efforts to identify the purchaser, this lead, like so many others, eventually went cold. If you're following this case as intently as we are, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps us continue to shine a light on cases like LaQuanta's, ensuring these stories reach a wider audience and potentially someone who might have that crucial piece of information needed to solve them. The investigation continued to evolve as technology advanced. In 2010, investigators used new cell phone forensic techniques to analyze the original data from 2003. They discovered that LaQuanta's phone had pinged off several towers in a pattern that suggested she, or at least her phone, had traveled in a specific direction after leaving Virginia Loop Road. This new information led to another series of searches, but still no concrete evidence was found. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this case is its impact on LaQuanta's family. Every year, they hold a vigil on December 24th, marking another year without answers. They've never given up hope of finding LaQuanta, even as the years have turned into decades. Her mother has become an advocate for other families of missing persons, turning her pain into purpose by helping others navigate similar tragic circumstances. In 2015, the case saw another potential breakthrough when a witness came forward claiming to have information about LaQuanta's disappearance. This individual, whose identity was protected for their safety, provided details that only someone with intimate knowledge of the case would know. However, despite this promising development, investigators were unable to corroborate key aspects of their story. The Montgomery Police Department has maintained that LaQuanta's case remains open and active. They've incorporated new investigative techniques as they've become available, including genetic genealogy and advanced DNA analysis. While these methods haven't yet led to a resolution, they represent hope that scientific advances might one day help solve this perplexing case. As we stand today in 2025, LaQuanta Riley has been missing for over 21 years. Her case has become one of Montgomery's most enduring mysteries, a reminder that behind every missing person statistic is a real person, a family left behind, and countless lives forever changed by an unexplained absence. For LaQuanta's family, the questions remain the same. What happened after those final phone calls on Christmas Eve? Who sent those mysterious text messages? Why would someone target a young woman with such a bright future ahead of her? The answers to these questions could be out there, perhaps in the memory of someone watching this video right now. If you have any information about LaQuanta Riley's disappearance, no matter how insignificant it might seem, please contact the Montgomery Police Department's Cold Case Unit. Remember, it's never too late to come forward with information that could help bring closure to a family that has waited far too long for answers. LaQuanta Riley was last seen wearing a white shirt, blue jeans, and white tennis shoes. She was 19 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, and weighed approximately 150 pounds. She would be 40 years old today. Her family still hopes that someone, somewhere, knows something that could help bring her home. Remember, no detail is too small, no tip too insignificant. Sometimes, the smallest piece of information can be the key that unlocks an entire investigation. For LaQuanta's family, that piece of information could mean the difference between another year of questions and finally getting the answers they've waited so long to receive. LaQuanta Riley's disappearance didn't just impact her immediate family and community, it fundamentally changed how Montgomery and the state of Alabama approach missing persons cases. In the years following her vanishing, several crucial reforms were implemented, largely due to the persistent advocacy of her family and the hard lessons learned from her investigation. One of the most significant changes came in 2006 when the Montgomery Police Department revised its protocols for handling missing persons cases. Previously, there had been a standard waiting period before initiating certain investigative procedures. LaQuanta's case demonstrated how critical those first few hours could be, leading to the elimination of waiting periods for cases showing suspicious circumstances. The digital evidence in LaQuanta's case, those mysterious text messages and phone calls, highlighted a growing challenge in modern investigations. In 2003, law enforcement wasn't fully equipped to handle digital forensics in real time. Today, every officer in Montgomery's Missing Persons Unit receives specialized training in digital evidence collection, a direct result of cases like LaQuanta's where crucial electronic evidence may have been lost due to technological limitations. Perhaps most notably, LaQuanta's case exposed a troubling pattern in how missing persons cases involving young African American women were handled in the early 2000s. Her mother, through her tireless advocacy, helped bring attention to this disparity. She spoke at law enforcement conferences, testified before state legislative committees, and worked with other families to push for equal attention to all missing persons cases regardless of race or socioeconomic status. In 2008, the Alabama Bureau of Investigation created a new cold case unit, partially inspired by cases like LaQuanta's. This unit specifically focuses on long-term missing persons cases, employing advanced investigative techniques and maintaining connections with similar units across the country. They've since reviewed hundreds of cases, including LaQuanta's, bringing fresh perspectives and modern forensic techniques to bear on these investigations. The investigation into LaQuanta's disappearance also led to improved coordination between different law enforcement agencies. In 2003, there were sometimes delays in sharing information between departments. Today, Montgomery has established protocols for immediate information sharing with neighboring jurisdictions, state agencies, and federal authorities when someone goes missing. Another crucial development stemmed from the challenges investigators faced with LaQuanta's cell phone records. In 2010, Alabama passed legislation requiring cell phone companies to expedite requests for location data in missing persons cases. This law, while too late to help in LaQuanta's initial investigation, has since aided in locating numerous missing persons across the state. LaQuanta's case also highlighted the importance of community involvement in missing persons investigations. The Riley family's experience led to the creation of several community-based missing persons support groups in Montgomery. These organizations now work closely with law enforcement, providing resources to families and helping to organize searches when someone goes missing. The mystery of those text messages received by LaQuanta's family after her disappearance led to changes in how digital evidence is handled. Today, Montgomery's police department has a dedicated digital forensics unit equipped with state-of-the-art technology for tracking and analyzing electronic communications. Every officer is trained to properly secure digital devices at a scene, ensuring valuable evidence isn't lost. In 2012, LaQuanta's case was added to the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP, a national database that helps identify patterns in violent crimes. This inclusion has allowed investigators to compare elements of her case with similar cases across the country, searching for connections that might otherwise go unnoticed. The impact of LaQuanta's case extends into the realm of public awareness. Her story has been used in training sessions for new police officers, teaching them the importance of thorough initial investigations and the potential consequences of overlooking even minor details. The Christmas Eve timing of her disappearance serves as a powerful reminder that tragedy can strike at any moment and law enforcement must be prepared to respond regardless of the date or time. LaQuanta's mother has become a powerful voice for missing persons advocacy. She regularly speaks at law enforcement training sessions, sharing her family's experience and helping officers understand the devastating impact of these cases from a family's perspective. Her insights have led to more empathetic and comprehensive approaches to working with families of missing persons. The handling of the physical evidence in LaQuanta's case has also influenced current practices. Today, Montgomery police use advanced documentation techniques to record every detail of a missing person's last known location. The intersection of Virginia Loop Road and Teresa Street, where LaQuanta was last seen, would now be subject to extensive photographic and video documentation, detailed measurements, and thorough forensic examination. Technology has evolved significantly since 2003, and each advancement brings new hope to cases like LaQuanta's. Modern DNA analysis techniques can detect traces that would have been impossible to find in 2003. Genetic genealogy, which has solved numerous cold cases across the country, continues to be applied to evidence from LaQuanta's case as new methods become available. The Riley family's experience has also led to changes in how missing persons cases are publicized. In 2003, social media didn't exist as we know it today. Now, Montgomery police have established protocols for immediate social media alerts when someone goes missing, reaching thousands of people within minutes. This approach has proven successful in numerous cases, though sadly too late to help in LaQuanta's initial disappearance. The psychological impact of LaQuanta's disappearance on Montgomery's community continues to resonate. Local residents who remember that Christmas Eve in 2003 still speak about how it changed their sense of security. Parents became more protective of their children. Young women became more cautious about traveling alone. The ripple effects of one missing person case transformed an entire community's perception of safety. What makes LaQuanta's case particularly impactful is how it exposed the vulnerability that exists in our daily routines. She wasn't engaging in risky behavior. She was making phone calls, planning to return home for Christmas, living her normal life. This ordinary backdrop to her disappearance served as a wake-up call to many who previously thought, "It couldn't happen to me." Media coverage of LaQuanta's case has evolved significantly over the years. Initial reports focused on the immediate search efforts, but as time passed, journalists began exploring deeper angles, the impact on her family, the broader implications for community safety, and the systemic issues in missing persons investigations. However, one constant remained: her mother's unwavering determination to keep her daughter's story alive. In recent years, true crime podcasts and social media have brought renewed attention to LaQuanta's case. Online communities dedicated to solving cold cases have analyzed every available detail, sometimes uncovering new perspectives that investigators hadn't considered. While these efforts haven't yet led to a breakthrough, they've helped maintain public awareness and demonstrate how technology can keep cold cases relevant in the public consciousness. Law enforcement officials working cold cases often say that time can be both an enemy and an ally. While physical evidence may degrade and memories may fade, time can also weaken the bonds of silence. People who may have been afraid to come forward in 2003 might feel safer doing so now. Relationships change, loyalties shift, and consciences may finally compel someone to speak up. As we conclude our examination of LaQuanta Riley's case, we're left with a story that transcends the typical true crime narrative. This isn't just about an unsolved disappearance, it's about a family's enduring hope, a community's transformation, and the ongoing evolution of how we handle missing persons cases. 21 years have passed since LaQuanta Riley borrowed her sister's phone to make those final calls. 21 Christmases have come and gone, each one a painful reminder of the day she vanished. But her story continues to impact lives, influence policy, and remind us all that behind every missing person statistic is a human being with a family who deserves answers. LaQuanta's mother still maintains that someone knows something about what happened to her daughter. She believes that person might be watching this video right now. If you have any information about LaQuanta Riley's disappearance, no matter how insignificant it might seem, please contact the Montgomery Police Department's Cold Case Unit. You can remain anonymous. Before we end, I want to thank you for staying with the story until the end. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us continue to bring attention to cases like LaQuanta's, ensuring these stories aren't forgotten and these families aren't alone in their search for answers. Remember, cold cases aren't cold to the families living with questions. Every share, every view, every moment spent learning about these cases increases the chance that they might one day be solved. LaQuanta Riley may have vanished on Christmas Eve 2003, but her story and her family's quest for answers continues. The light in her mother's window still burns every night, waiting for answers that could bring LaQuanta home. Perhaps someone watching this video holds the key to extinguishing that light of waiting and replacing it with the light of truth and closure that the Riley family has sought for so long.